To Climate Action Live. I'm your host, Axel, and tonight I'm talking to Jane and Claire from Climate Action West Northamptonshire, or CORN for short. And I've got loads of fancy new things to press. Let's see if I can completely not mess this up. Let's go to Claire first and introduce her, and then we can come to Jane. Hello, thanks for joining. Oh no, the audio's gone. Why's the audio gone? No, still gone. Sorry. Jane, is your audio still working?
Let's find out.
Yes, yours is working. That's absolutely okay. It's a live show, and I'm getting blasted by text messages as well. This is typical.
Fast-paced modern world.
Fast-paced modern world, exactly, yes. Hello, Claire.
Hiya.
Are you back? No, I'm afraid not. The headphones work. Okay, I'll tell you what, Claire. While you're working on that, I'm going to go to Jane.
Mm-hmm.
Jane, you're the chair. Sorry, I can't even speak today. The chair of CORN. Is it okay to call it CORN, or do you prefer?
No, corn is ground. Yeah.
What's CORN? Tell us about what you guys are doing.
Okay.
In West Northamptonshire.
Cool. So yes, full name Climate Action West Northamptonshire, which kind of gives away what we do. Effectively, our objective at the very highest level is to move to a situation where West Northamptonshire is clean and safe in terms of that being aligned to a zero carbon future, and so it's basically climate mitigation and adaptation, I guess you could call it in those terms. And also, one thing that's quite important to us is that is done in an equitable way. So we're also concerned about climate justice. We are purely and simply a group of residents of the area. So we are not climate experts. We're not scientists. We are not doing this professionally. Everyone's doing it in, it's a voluntary group. We are not affiliated to any political party or even to any larger sort of environmental or climate group. We're a standalone organisation. We are essentially willing to work with absolutely anybody who shares our objectives and can help us to achieve the better future for West Northamptonshire that we are looking at.
Fantastic. That is very great to hear. We have something very similar. Well, I want to say very similar, but it's, I guess, a lot smaller in down here in the sunny south of Milton Keynes. I'm afraid we are not as well organised as you guys are, because you have a proper membership scheme. You've got. Let me see if I can bring it up without completely messing up my technology. I've got a slide here.
Oh, awesome!
You've got. Well, first of all, you have been going for a few years, but in those few years, you've already got 40 members, and you've got a membership set up, and a burgeoning email list. So, compared to, I think what we've got going on in Milton Keynes, this is amazing to see that many people involved in taking climate action. So, how did you find them? How did you grow your membership?
Wow, that's a really good question. So, I think we've lost Claire because we started, and I wasn't around right at the very beginning of the group, but I think it was initially started.
It was called differently, wasn't it?
It was called South Northampton Action on Climate because originally it was based around Towcester, and obviously at that time we were talking about South Northamptonshire District Council. That was before the West Northampton Unitary came in, and there was some support from Friends of the Earth. So initially, sort of information about the fact that we were meeting, that we formed a group, went out to an existing Friends of the Earth mailing list. So that really helped us to draw in a sort of a group of people. I guess since then, we've really grown by word of mouth. So sometimes we'll have people who are already members of the group who'll tell other people and they'll come along. We obviously we use social media, so sort of moderately active on Twitter and Facebook, so we get some through there. We have had events and things like that, so trying to bring people in there. So yeah, we just tried to make it easy for people to find us, really. I do think the fact that we have regular meetings and we are very diligent about sending out meeting notes and just trying to be really organised and professional about it, I think that helps people sort of come back. Because what I hear from talking to people at Friends of the Earth, who obviously have a number of local groups, is that it's often a very common problem for people to rock up to a couple of meetings and then drop off again. And we really don't seem to have had that problem too much. Obviously the subscriber list that we've got is a lot more than the people that come to meetings. But we had a meeting last Thursday. That was we always have our monthly meetings, third Thursday of every month. And we had, I think, 23 people there, which honestly for me I think is quite good to get people to spend an hour and a half talking about climate stuff in their own time.
Oh, Claire's back.
Yay. Hello, Claire.
Hello, Claire.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah. And I think we try really hard to be engaging, and and very conscious that we're not being preachy, that we want to be inclusive and bring everyone along with us. Because if the people who already really care about the environment and are trying to do the best that they can did absolutely everything brilliantly, it's not enough. We need to be willing to work with everyone else who doesn't really know what they're doing, hasn't got time to think about it. We need to be able to bring all those people along with us somehow. Fantastic.
Claire, welcome back, and great to see that the audio is working. We can hear you now. Jane jumped into the deep waters. That was the origin story of corn. I'm quite interested in drilling down a little bit more. Apparently, you're the right person to tell us kind of how you guys got started, because this is all going back to 2019, pre-pandemic times, and a council election, I think.
Well, actually, it was in the run-up to the general election.
Oh, general election. Okay.
Yeah, the 2019 general elections, and there was a meeting hosted by Friends of the Earth in Towcester in the town hall, and we went along, a few of my colleagues who were helping in my campaign and other people that I've met along my sort of sustainable journey, and we set up, and so they were looking for the community to take on a local action group, drive it, and run it from within the Towcester area, the South Northants area. So Laura Thomas kindly took the lead on that, but she's since moved out of the area. But with Laura, we formed South Northants Action on Climate, SNAC. And that was, as you say, immediately pre-pandemic. So we had a few months where we had organised a climate strike in Towcester in February 2020, and then very shortly after, we had to stop all our activities and revert to Zoom, just as everyone else did. And then just fast forward about a year after we had been meeting regularly on Zoom, but really hamstrung in the actions we could take face to face, we redrew our boundaries, as it were, to line up with the creation of the West Northants Unitary Authority. So yes, in terms of council elections, that's where we really got going again. We relaunched, we rebranded as Corn, because to show the increased area that we're covering. And our first task was really to ask all the candidates in the council elections to sign a pledge, and which Jane may or may not have mentioned just now. No. You did, yeah. So that was our first real action as Corn, and we going from strength to strength. Very busy.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I'm trying to balance all three things that I'm doing here. Just talking, thinking, pressing buttons. Apologies for people watching. If I'm a little bit slow to cotton on, and I'm terrible at multitasking. I shouldn't be doing this on my own. So first of all, congratulations on the acronyms, because I think both snack and corn are amazing kind of acronyms for what you guys were doing, and there's no you can see the relation between corn and snacking, I guess.
Yep.
But I'd love to find out a little bit more about your kind of core mission, as it were, because one of the things, let me see if I can get the screen up without making complete twat of myself. There we go. It's about holding the local council to account. And I think the council where you are, similarly to a lot of councils in the country, have declared a climate emergency, but they seem to be very bad at actually doing anything about the climate emergency, because I can only speak from the Milton Keynes side, and I'm not a member of the council, but I'm a member of the town council in Bletchley and Fenny, and we also declared a climate emergency, I think about the same time as everybody else did, I guess, just before the pandemic. And we've only just started forming a committee on climate change and actually trying to get a plan of action sorted out. So you might be a step further than we are down here.
So yes, I think the three councils that preceded the West Northampton Unitary had all, in some form or another, declared climate emergency prior. Unfortunately, what tended to happen was that they did that in the sort of a 12 months run up to the Unitary Authority taking over, and then sort of stood back and said, well, we can't do much, can we? Because, we're all going to be dissolved soon, so we'll leave it all to the Unitary to sort out. Unfortunately, and, absolutely understandably in some senses, when the Unitary came together, they had an enormous amount of bureaucratic and administrative stuff to sort out. And that has really been a major obstacle to them making quick progress with the climate action plan. They have done some things, and the very good news is that next week, in fact, a week today, they're holding a formal launch event for their sustainability strategy at Northampton Museum. So really looking forward to that, to see how that goes, and actually seeing some definite actions coming out of it. And I do feel like the other thing that really needs to happen is that there needs to be much better communication to the people across the area as to what is actually happening and what people need to do. Because I think Claire would agree with me in that if you look across the general public, there is a rising awareness and rising concern about the threat posed by climate change, but a lot of people simply don't know what to do. And they, it feels like, I guess if I'm not me, who's like seriously concerned about climate change, I'm just an average person with kids and I'm busy with my life, and I'm thinking, well, there's clearly a really big thing here. But if it's as bad as people say, surely the government's going to tell me what to do, aren't they? They're just like, if it's genuine an existential threat to humanity, someone's going to tell me.
Exactly.
But it just isn't happening.
I'm chuckling because I've heard this so many times, and I've had the same kind of experience myself. And I was sitting here thinking, about the future that my two children have. They're, 10 and 11 this year. And wow, the Arctic, this week is on fire. Not enough that we've got World War III to worry about, but the Arctic and the Antarctic have both extreme climate events, and people are thinking, oh, well, it's so far away. And yes, the government will probably do something about it. And sadly, I think, especially with our government in the UK, and I'm trying not to be political on the show, but there's a lot of talk, like I'm going to paraphrase what Greta Thunberg said at COP26, it's blah, blah, blah. People are very quick to say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But then oh look, there's fracking, continuing, or there's a new oil field in the North Sea being drilled into, or coal plants are now rebranded as clean coal. That's what the government is doing, but they're not really doing anything on a local level. Plus, there isn't any guidance. So yeah, I completely second what you said there, Jane. Claire, what's your experience? How do we get people to take action locally?
Well, I think, like you say, we need to raise awareness of how serious the situation is, despite the lack of action that we are seeing from our leaders locally and nationally. And also sort of explain, just like you said, Jane, we don't need everyone who is already engaged doing everything perfectly. We need everyone in the whole world doing lots of little bits. And I think that's key. I think a lot of people feel that, it's so big, I can't do it on my own. Why should I bother? Why does it matter if I, take a flight here, there, or everywhere? It's just one flight. Loads of people do it all the time. It's having that mindset that all these little actions add up.
They do. And the question I feel like people need to ask themselves is, if everyone did what I'm doing, is it still okay? And the answer is no. If everyone in the world did lived how in the UK, it would not be okay.
What are the top 3 things, if we want to go BuzzFeed on this, that the council locally can do to encourage people like you and me to take action? And I'm completely with you on the whole, if 1 million people doing a small thing that makes a difference, that's a huge difference, rather than 10 people doing, trying to change the world. What do you think the council should be saying to us local normal people about, for example, recycling? Does that make a big difference? Is that something that the local councils can influence directly? Would that help?
I mean, I think recycling can be a bit of a red herring. It is important that we try and reuse as many resources, but it's very energy intensive to do so. And what we need to do is reframe mindsets to reducing consumption in the first place. Really, we should be banning plastic bottles of water. That it serves no purpose. You're just buying a plastic bottle. There is a great initiative for refilling. Everyone has a very trendy reusable bottle now. There should be no reason to sell bottled water. So things like that, really sort of leading by example, and promoting active travel is a big one as well. And public transport. In rural areas, public transport is generally not fit for purpose. You can't rely on it necessarily to get you where you need to be at the times you need to be. And cycling from village to village is very dangerous quite often. So I think we need to have more investment and more awareness of why we need to change those habits. There was an example of an Oxfordshire council who have recently gone vegan. And
The whole
I
council?
think, yeah.
Oh, is that the Jeremy Clarkson story where Jeremy, with his, he started a farm now, and he got all up in arms about the council going vegan. Fantastic. Okay, that's that story.
I mean, it's a controversial subject. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but our diet does have a big impact on the planet, and not everyone needs to be vegan or even vegetarian, but we do need to have awareness of where our food comes from, and how those. I think a lot of our sustainable actions aren't really known to people. So I think having the education of exactly everything that we do has a consequence, and we can choose the ones that initially suit us better and are more easily adaptable and make it less inconvenient than we think it might be to enable action.
Should we do more than to teach our children through, for example, school? Curriculums to kind of educate them where food comes from, what impact that food or your diet has, not just on your health but and well-being, but also on the environment you live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so, and I think children are, they are taking a real burden for us adults. They are learning about these things and they have eco-anxiety. But I think a massive driver of climate change is our consumption of everything, really: clothes, toys, household objects, etc. And I do know how I have 2 children, and I know the pressure as a parent that you feel to provide them with material goods, the presents they want for birthdays and Christmas, and and it's all it's very fleeting, some of these crazes that they go through, and you don't have the longevity of items that you perhaps might as an adult. So there is pressure there, and I think it would be good if children had the link between what they want and their toys and everything, and how they can't necessarily have the latest clothes or the latest video games all the time, and perhaps educating on how secondhand is great.
Adults model that behaviour as well, and not be the person who has to have the latest iPhone as soon as it comes out.
Yes.
And I think that's probably, going back to what the council can do, that's another key thing that they need to do, is actually show how it should be done. It needs to be evident in what the council is doing that the need to reduce carbon emissions and achieve that net zero goal is a primary driver behind all their decisions. They cannot have half the council just carrying on as normal and somebody that are still trying to achieve net zero. That is going to happen.
Is that enough, net zero? Looking at how bad things are?
Probably not, but it's a long way ahead of where we are now. And actually, I'm surprisingly reading a book about climate change at the moment, and the one phrase in there that really struck me is don't measure your progress against what seems like an unattainable goal. Measure your progress by where you've come since you started. And I think that's a really important message to get across to people, because I think potentially there is so much for people to change, and the difference between how we live now and how we're going to have to live in 10, 15, 20 years' time is pretty big. Do something now so that your life is more sustainable as yesterday, then that's fine. And do something again next week and next month, and gradually you'll get there. And actually all these little changes, so start drinking oat milk instead of dairy. Just that one change. You're not going vegan, you're not even going vegetarian, but you are reducing the amount of animal products that you absorb. And the National Food Strategy recommendation was that everyone in the UK should eat 30% less meat. That isn't that hard to do.
What does 30% equate to? I'm really bad at math. Is that like
it's about 2 days a week?
1 meal a day, isn't it?
2 days a week.
Or 2 days a week meat free, or 1 meal. And actually, again, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. And again, it's how it works best for people as individuals. But for example, you could be vegan for breakfast and lunch, and you could eat meat for your dinner, and you'd still be reducing the amount of animal products you take in immensely, and you still get to eat the things you want to eat.
Makes sense. That's a great tip. I just want to come back to what Claire said about eco-anxiety, or I'm not sure whether that's the right buzzword to use, but about the whole anxiety about climate change. And it came up as well when I joined you, not this month, but last month, I think I joined your Climate Cafe. You stressed, I think, Claire, that it's a safe space. It's not a public kind of forum that's open to trolls. It's by people who registered to be there. And I think that the whole anxiety thing came across from several people. I just wondered, how big an impact do you see this anxiety is on our children, and then on the adults as well, on the parents especially?
Oh, it's a terrible thing to be worrying about, isn't it? Your very future biologically as an animal, which we are. You have to keep you and your family safe, and so we are hardwired to worry about the future and our survival and our family's survival. So with that and everything else that's going on in the world at the moment, in Ukraine, it's a very difficult time for everyone, and it's very easy to cope with that by burying your head in the sand. So yeah, I think it's I think harnessing the anxiety, eco-anxiety is not something that needs to be treated and got rid of. It
It
needs to
isn't
be
a
something
mental
that's
disorder.
harnessed.
It's a rational
It's not at
response.
all. It's a
It's a
completely
rational response.
normal
Exactly.
and understandable response to an existential threat. So we need to harness that and make it into action rather than inaction and inertia, which I think we often find ourselves when we're overwhelmed.
So, what can people expect from the monthly meetings you've got? First of all, they're all online, or is there an in-person, event as well that you run?
They're all online. We thought about, obviously, we were forced to go online when the pandemic started, and once in-person meetings were allowed, we continued having them. But because we're now spread across the whole of Northamptonshire, which is it's a very broad geographical area, felt we really couldn't justify the environmental impacts of asking people to travel to an in-person event. Plus, there are people who would find it very difficult to travel to an in-person event, either because they're still, clinically vulnerable, and we know there's still a lot of COVID out there, or someone in Clare's position who's got 2 young children at home. You can't just get up and go out of the house for 3 hours on an evening without having to do a lot of planning for that. So we've kept it online, and that does seem to work pretty well.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a safe environment, isn't it? The online world, like this kind of setup is kind of sprung out of the whole pandemic as well, where I thought it'd be really good to continue the conversations. And some of the conversations I've had with people during COVID were about climate change, and I thought, hang on a minute, if there's nothing at the moment that kind of showcases what people are doing. And like you were saying several times, it's about the small changes we're making, and perhaps to take away some of this anxiety, not just encourage people to make small changes and break down this mountain of a problem, but also maybe sing the praises and this is a very plug friendly show. I want everybody who comes on tell their story and plug what they're doing and not hold back, because I think there needs to be a space to tell a positive story and say, look, here's a bunch of people that come together that make a difference locally. Yes, it might only be a small area if you take the whole world, but I think that's exactly the point. In order to reduce that anxiety, we have to get together in a small environment and make a change there by lobbying the council, by maybe even considering to run as a councillor and be heard as a voice from a growing minority, I would wager.
Yes.
With a more kind of eco-conscious voice or concern being raised. I think one of you ran as councillor or as a political candidate as well, didn't you?
Yeah, that was me.
How
Twice
did that
now.
go?
Yeah.
So the first one, I jumped straight in at the deep end with the general election campaign in 2019. I increased the share of the vote quite considerably. I used to know the numbers off by heart, but I've forgotten them now. But it was really encouraging to see how thousands of people voted Green in a very safe Tory seat. So it was really heartening, to see that. And then with the local council elections last May, I think I came fourth. I think one place further up, and I would have been on the council.
I think I came fourth as well.
Yeah, so it's exciting, and it gives, I think, regardless of where you are, what constituency you're in, what chance you've got of getting in, I think giving people the option to vote for what they believe in, whichever colour party that is really important. And it's always a joy staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning for the count.
It's interesting you're saying that, Claire, because I have a very similar experience. I also decided to become politically active, and I jumped into the deep end last year in the local council elections, running as a candidate for Bletchley in Milton Keynes, and wow, it was quite the experience. And it's interesting because, despite the fact that I'm complete unknown to most people in this area here, people saw the green kind of bit on the ballot paper, and it's like, actually, we need to make a change. And sadly, it wasn't enough to trump the Labour candidate, but I did give the Tories a good run for their money. And I think, speaking as a Green Party member, and as a I guess I can, you might know this already, but I'm a co-chair of the local Green Party as well. Putting my political hat on for a second, I think what we're seeing is a slow but steady shift happening across the country where people are saying, crap, we've got to do something. We need to, left and right is no longer really the priority. We need so many other things.
So important. The climate change is too important to worry about party politics. People can leave what they like about other things. Climate change can't be divided down party lines.
I mean, there's a difference, though, isn't there, between the national kind of politics and the whole, I don't know, socialist, capitalist, red, blue, whatever, and what happens locally. Local councils have a very different role to play in our economy and our well-being. And how do you see that? Is what's more important almost? Is it where do you see the local councils come in?
I think they're really important. Yeah. No, go for it, Claire.
I was just going to say, I think it's because we need such action from everyone on a local level. We need this sort of almost, going down even further into the town and parish councils. We need this grassroots. So I think the closer we are to the local community, the more of an impact that government can have. Obviously, we need the national policies, which, we can't do it without government action, of course. But I do think this is where local government really can come into its own and make a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, from an individual perspective, it's actually really easy to speak to your parish council, to speak to your district councillor, and let them know how you feel. So that is one thing, again, that people can do that doesn't involve difficult or expensive or sacrificial changes to their lifestyle. They can just speak up and say what they want. So if you want a cycle path from your village into the nearest town, then write to your district council and say, why haven't I got a cycle path?
How does the local council respond then to what you're doing at the moment? What's their view?
It's difficult. So I think in terms of raising our profile, we've actually done a really good job. Since July last year, we have turned up at every single full council meeting, and at least one member of Corn, and on many occasions two, has made a statement to the council using the public participation element of that meeting. And I think they find it embarrassing, and they want us to stop. So I think that's a really good thing. It's keeping them honest.
They want you to stop. They want you to stop making their life.
They want us to stop turning up to every single council meeting and saying you're not doing enough, which is essentially what we're doing. And we genuinely do not want the council to be the enemy. They are people we need to be working with our local community to deliver that cleaner, safer, equitable future that we all want. But
what's the pushback you've had from them? Did they push back at all?
Not. It's. I wouldn't say pushback, but we have had the sort of response from them that it's very difficult for us to get moving on this because we are still getting ourselves straight following the combination of three councils into one unitary, which again, I do understand that involves a lot of work. And to be fair to West Northamptonshire, I think they've made a better fist of it than North Northamptonshire have. But they do seem to be getting there now, and I do think they're taking it seriously. it is.
When everything
Yeah,
is priority, it's
yeah, it's
yeah.
hard.
I
It
guess
is.
this isn't the number one priority when you've just kind of merged and you're changing the whole kind of
Yeah.
way that the council works. Can I just ask, are you aware of any action plan being drawn up then by the local council, or perhaps do they have a committee to
Yes.
look at creating an action plan?
So I believe they have started drawing up an action plan, and I'm hoping that we'll get a sight of that at their sustainability strategy launch next week. They don't yet have a climate committee or anything like that, but I think they have plans to put one in place. So yes,
Fantastic. That's
those steps
reassuring.
are being taken. Yeah, indeed.
Have you heard of the oh gosh, what's it called? The raking. Sorry, let me try this again. Have you heard of the council's rating, or are you aware of where the council in Northamptonshire rates amongst all the other
Oh
councils
no,
for
I know what
climate
you. I
action?
have heard of it, and I did see it, and I can't remember. It wasn't a very. They didn't rate very high, but if I'm honest, I thought they scored better than I expected them to. They were
Relatively.
largely, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Go, carry on. It's fine,
You
carry
can
on.
see how excited I am and
Got a bit of lag.
how annoyed I am. Because one of the things that I took away from looking at those rankings, was the word I was looking for earlier, was something that you mentioned earlier, which is all about communication with the local constituents and talking to people about what climate change means to them in the local context, what they could do or should do, and just generally engaging with their constituents. And most people just, seem to not communicate with most of their constituents, let alone focus on anything climate change related. They just do their thing, and most people don't even know. That's kind of one of the reasons why I got into politics, because I got really fed up not knowing what people were doing in my name.
Yeah, I think it's very, and I think for me, Claire and I. So Claire has been very brave and stood in the bigger elections. I haven't done that yet, but we are both now parish councillors, and certainly for me, the reason why I chose to do that was because I felt like I needed a seat at the table. And even though it's only at parish council, it's the very, very lowest level of local government. It's a starting point, and you've got to, you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is, I guess.
Don't knock it. I mean, I didn't know anything. I didn't even know the difference between parish and a town council, or the city council for that matter. It was just really opening my eyes to the fact that there are thousands of people in my immediate neighborhood, and I'm not sure how you feel when you walk down your neighborhood or what your neighborhood is like, but I'd never notice anything because I just drive by it, or I walk to the shops and I don't look.
Yeah.
And when I looked at the registers and everything, I was like, wow, there's how many thousands of people in my direct neighborhood, and it just opened my eyes to the fact that there are so many people. You don't often make that connection between the environment you're in and the amount of people that you see, unless you're going to a big concert. And none of us have been to a concert, I wager, for the last 2 years. But
Indeed.
it's really hard to fathom, I found. And if we can change 1% of those, thousands of people, that's a big number in itself, and that can lead to massive changes.
Well, and it can lead to, if you can get to one person and that one person talks to 3 other people, it's all that kind of stuff, isn't it? That message will spread.
Speaking of messages, that's a great segue. In fact, I wanted to talk to you about the other thing that we touched on before, and dive into that a little bit more. Raising public awareness. And you said you've got the regular online climate cafes, but there's also a conference I think you're working on with NACRE in I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but in September. There's a 2-day family festival and conference about climate. Tell us more about this. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, and I have to say, this is one of the things that I'm really excited about. So NACRE, for those who don't, so ACRE is a national organisation, and it's Action for Communities in the Rural Environment, I believe, and so that is Northants ACRE. So they're a charity which is based in Hunsbury Hill, on the outskirts of Northampton. We approached them about, we really felt that there was a need for town and parish councillors to be better informed about what they needed to do about climate change, because yet again, as a parish councillor myself and talking to others, it's really clear that they haven't been given any official guidance on this is what you need to do to help your community get through climate change. There's quite a lot of information out there offered by people like Friends of the Earth and sort of voluntary organisations, but there's nothing official. So we asked NACRE, can we do something? It's not just for parish and town councils, so that was the original impetus, but obviously we'd also like it to be sort of small and medium-sized enterprises and things like that. And they were actually really, really keen. We're, very impressed and really happy that they've been extremely proactive in taking it forward. And actually, although it is sort of formally a co-organising, they are taking on a lot of the work in terms of arranging speakers and things like that. So it's 7th and 12th of September. Sunday the 11th is going to be a family festival, sort of green themed. So you have lots of local food providers there. You'll have sort of action around what you can do at home, fun games and things like that for children and all this kind of stuff. So people can come and learn and actually have a nice day out too. And then on the Monday, the 12th of September, it will be more of a conference style where we'll actually have speakers coming along and talking on topics like, how you can increase biodiversity in your parish. We're going to have a speaker on sort of green energy and those kinds of things. So I think it's going to be really great. And they're also going to organise taster sessions leading up to it. We're not quite sure how many yet, but it's likely that one of them might be at Northampton University, who have done some absolutely amazing things since moving to their new site to make themselves a more sustainable organisation. So we really think that they can be seen as a role model to show some of the things that they've done. A fantastic event later on this year.
Going to assume that people can find out more by following you on Twitter and Facebook.
Oh, yes, please.
We're just gonna,
yes.
Just gonna have to remember to plug your social, because that is one of the key channels that you've got to actually reach out and raise public awareness and where people can find out. Plus, you've got the website where people can register and also find out more by joining the mailing list you've got.
Yes, we've got we haven't got a proper website as yet, but we have got a membership form, and I have previously links to that up on our Facebook and Twitter, but I probably ought to do that on a very regular basis. Remember to come to the meetings. So we always we've got an Eventbrite account, so we all set up at our monthly meeting on Eventbrite, plus any other meetings that we have, such like the climate cafes, are always on there, so people can register. And we also create Facebook events for all our meetings. So if you follow us on Facebook, you'll find out when the meetings are, and everyone is welcome to come.
Amazing. So the festival is obviously an in-person thing, but the conference, will that be kind of a hybrid event, or how
it will be a hybrid event? Yes. I don't think you can have an event these days without it being hybrid.
That's a new thing.
Yeah.
Mm. Oh, that'd be amazing. And in person, where will it be again? Sorry, I think I missed.
So it's the NACRE site in Hunsbury Hill, which is in the south of Northampton. Yeah, they've actually got a stick site there, so yeah, it's a really good place to have things like that.
I'm so out of touch with anything in person that it is such a weird thing that my mind, I have to retrain my mind to kind of think places. people,
Yes.
real life. It is such a
Yeah.
strange concept now. Everything, it's like, oh yeah, it's an online thing. No, wait a second. This sounds like something that you attend in person, but that sounds fantastic. I'm going to put that together with various links in the description below for later as well, and in the
Fantastic,
blog
thank you.
post so people can find it. There was one other thing you do, if I remember, from the minor preparatory work that I've done for this, to my shame. But it kind of stood out for me. There's some physical projects that you're also involved with. So not enough that you've got the climate cafe regularly and you're involved with the council directly and indirectly, holding them to account and trying to change everything, and the festival and the conference, but you're also doing kind of a physical air monitoring project that's kicked off.
Yes. So, one of our members, Harry Mellor, is really keen on, and I guess he's quite a technically minded person, unlike perhaps myself, but on air quality monitoring, partly because it's something that is done not particularly well officially. So there is it's actually a worldwide science project. It's actually really nice. It's interesting depending on how interested you are in this type of stuff. There's a real-time map that you can look at which shows all the air quality monitors throughout the world, and if you look at it, it will show you what level of 2.5 and 10.0 particulates are being picked up by all of the monitors at any point in time. The reason we measure particulates is because it's much easier to measure those than to actually look at things like the level of carbon dioxide and other pollutants in the air. So it's kind of using particulates a little bit as a proxy for other things, but it's really interesting to see how the levels of particulates change. So, for example, Harry sent me a link to a map the other day because it was showing like really high levels of particulates throughout the UK, and apparently that was because we were getting some winds from the Sahara bringing dust across. There are a number of those monitors up in different locations around West Northamptonshire, one of which is in my garden, and you can see exactly what they're picking up at any point in time.
So is this something that you're encouraging people to participate in then?
We'd be really happy. Yeah, Harry would be really happy to lend a monitor to anybody who wants to put one up and has got a place that's suitable to put it. They have to be linked to Wi-Fi and they need a continual power source. So it's got to be somewhere it can be plugged in time and you won't need to unplug it. But other than that, the tiny amount of electricity, tiny amount of Wi-Fi. So yes, that can definitely be done.
As somebody who suffers from asthma and has escaped the big smoke to live in Monkeys, which is developing quickly into another big smoke, but it's something very important to me personally.
It's super important. And actually, what's really interesting about the results that we're seeing, and these monitors haven't been up very long, and it's really important to sort of track over a period of time. It's also really important to point out that they're not laboratory. So you can't place, 100% reliance on what they're showing. They should be able to show you trends over time. That's the time when we are seeing the highest level of particulates being picked up by the monitors is not when traffic is heavy, but when people come home from work and light their wood-burning stoves.
Wow, that's still a thing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I did not know that. Because I would have assumed it's when people commute the most, which I would assume is in the mornings and the evenings. But
no, I mean, I think that has an impact as well. But the early indications from the monitors that we've got up are that, I think people probably know if those who look into it, that wood burning stoves are a major source of air pollution. So not quite the same thing. Yes, it's a big problem.
Should we ban it, or should we tax it, or discourage people?
Simple answer is yes. I mean, there are still some people who rely on burning wood or coal as their main source of heating. What we should probably be looking really carefully at is whether it's appropriate to light a wood-burning stove as a purely recreational activity. And fire pits can be consigned to history as soon as possible. Because they're really not necessary.
Yeah. I mean, am in a fairly old building, and I had a gas fireplace which I disconnected because it's well, it's a hazard for my cats and for my kids, I guess. But
Yeah.
a coal or wood burning stove, that's something that I associate with something that a few generations ago was a thing, but
Yeah.
that people still use that in this day and age I don't understand it. Why you would do it other
I
than
suppose it's
for, like I
nice,
said,
isn't
for the
it? To
turkey.
be honest, it's lovely. It's cozy to sit round a fire. Kids love it. It's just nice. It's a lovely way on a winter's evening to light the fire, but it's not good for you.
I guess I don't have the same memories sitting. I mean, it sounds romantic when you describe it like that, but I kind of have that view of a nice rolling countryside or the sea or something nice to look out over. That sounds very nice, but I've looking out of my window, it's just other buildings, I'm afraid.
Yes.
It's it's interesting though because you're right. It's a valid source for some people certainly to kind of heat their environments. And in fact, I looked at building a tiny house, and a lot of people have just a wood burner or a really old kind of cast iron kind of thing. And a friend of mine who lives on a canal boat, he heats his entire boat using one of those. And I think it's better than the diesel engine, but I'm not entirely sure. It's just maybe just looks a little bit more romantic and smells less industrial. But I think we
The
need to
thing
get
is,
away from
if you can smell smoke, there are
that.
particulates going into your lungs.
Yeah, which I have to say, it's since COVID came along, and I'm wearing a mask pretty much constantly when I go out. My asthma has improved because
Has it
I
really?
don't pick up all of the stuff that comes out of the exhaust. For example, when I go to
Yeah.
on the school run with my kids, I walk by a main road, Water Eaton Road, and oh my god, everybody drops off their kids by car, and then when I drive into the school with their car, and then they sit in traffic in their
Oh my
car,
God.
idling their big diesel engines,
Yeah.
and I, quite often find myself coughing quite heavily just walking to school with them. And they said, "Daddy, what's wrong with you?" I said, "Well, look at the exhaust." And we've calmed that road. We went from, well, I'm not sure whether we changed the speed limit, but we put in the bumps in the road, and we put up a sign at one point saying, watch out, school, slow down, all of that stuff. But it is a main road, and people don't seem to slow down. And sadly, we didn't draw a baseline, because it would have been really interesting, just from an air quality perspective, to kind of have a baseline to measure against. Like you said, let's measure progress from where we started rather than some kind of elusive goal. And it would have been really intriguing to see how bad the air quality was in that school area, which I think, for me, it's probably too late. But for our children's sake, I would prefer they don't ruin their health with all of
Yeah.
the particulates that are in the air. But wearing a mask certainly helps against that. At least for me, it did.
Yeah.
But I think with idling is there's absolutely no reason for it at all. It should be a low hanging fruit. It's actually illegal, and I don't think many people realise that you can actually get a fine if you keep your car idling for a certain amount of time.
On the public highway.
There's absolutely no benefit. Yeah, there is no. A lot of the time, you can see pros and cons to these things, even if they are bad habits or detrimental to the environment. But I just personally cannot see any benefit for not turning your engine off when you're not going anywhere, especially with the fuel prices of today.
Yeah. I bet it's convenience, because a lot of people just want to have the heating on when it's cold, or the aircon on when it's hot.
Yeah. Another massive advantage to electric cars.
Exactly. I mean, I switched from an electric car to a hybrid because of the charging infrastructure and the issues I had traveling slightly further afield, like going up to Northampton, which isn't terribly far away, but long story short, I now have a car that does burn petrol again, which is something I didn't want. But it is amazing because I drive it 99% on electric power. So I only use the petrol engine when I go further afield, like go up to Northamptonshire or Bedfordshire or somewhere. But I think, again, the councils play a role in helping us understand the problem, because I bet a lot of people that sit in these cars driving their kids to school don't see anything wrong with that because they can't visualize the impact of their actions. So if the council put
completely realised
a
our whole
screen,
the infrastructure of a lot of our cities and towns is built for convenience of cars, not for the convenience of people.
Yeah.
And the people are really keen to develop driverless cars. What would be much nicer would be to have a larger number of carless people.
yeah. That's well put, absolutely. And Milton Keynes is one of those really bad examples of town planning to some extent, because we went from a city that was built around the car but had a huge component of redways and encouraging people to walk or cycle, but it also had a complete absence of, from my point of view, an absence of public transport. So there's no railway, apart from the mainline railway, but the buses are the only way to get around, and they've cut that to a bone. And now with the new estates that are being built, not sure where it is, what it's like where you are, but where we are here in Milton Keynes, a lot of the old school kind of thinking of let's have cycle path, let's encourage people to have shops in walking distance, that's kind of thrown out for the benefit of let's just cram as many new built houses into this greenbelt land.
The developers don't want to build anything they don't have to build, do they? So they don't want to build infrastructure like schools and doctor surgeries and shops. They just want to build houses that they can make money on.
I think cycling is a big factor. If you take away the car and you say, look, just get on your bike, we make it really easy to get on your bike, like they did, I think, in it's not Rotterdam.
Copenhagen.
It's a city in the Netherlands.
Oh, is it in the Netherlands? Okay.
Amsterdam.
Yeah. Is it?
I went there even. I can't remember. It's at the tip of my tongue. It's a big city in the Netherlands, and they went exactly the opposite way, where the local council basically said, no, we're going to block those roads for cars. And people said, what? You can't stop cars? I only just bought a new car. But no, it's trams, it's buses, and it's cycle path, where they said, no, we're going to close that whole road, and we widen the pavement so people with their buggies and everything else, and we have a cycle path that's dedicated. So basically the 2-lane kind of road, they turned into a big pavement and cycle path, which was amazing to see. And a year later, people said, actually, you know what? My quality of life has improved because I'm more active, there's less pollution, it's safer for the kids especially, and there's also an accessibility kind of concern, I guess, that people don't address either. If you have a car, that's great, but what if you are, you have accessibility needs where you can't drive a car or you need more space? You go to the shopping centre or somewhere, regularly people block accessible spaces. If you go on a bus, chances are you're not going to get on a bus if you're in a wheelchair, because somebody's already occupying it with their bike or pram. So I think there's a lot of things that are interconnected, and they are almost hyper local, where I say, okay, if I want to get around just my local neighborhood, I have to drive, because if I walk, I'm going to get run over by a car because there's no opportunities for people to cross the road safely. What's it like where you are?
It's not probably too bad in the village, is it? It's just it's not too bad being a village. We don't have any super busy roads. We don't have dual carriageways or anything like that in our immediate environment, but we do have fast country lanes. We also have people who don't adhere to a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in those smaller roads that we do have. So the risks are there. And then getting to Northampton, there is a cycle path, but it's not very good. I certainly wouldn't take my children cycling into town on it. So yeah, we need improvements, definitely.
Yeah. And you need better connections. I mean, you can, in theory, as Claire said, the cycle path immediately out of the village towards Northampton is not brilliant. Once you get to the next village, there is a much better cycle path. But actually, on none of the other roads out of the village is there any kind of a cycle path at all. It's just a question of riding on the road. And some people just don't want to do that. And I totally understand why.
Well, if you read the headlines, people seem to have a really dangerous time cycling on the road. And I'm with Claire. I wouldn't want to take my kids cycling on the main road, and this is one of the issues where I live. It's not a village; it's kind of a suburb of Milton Keynes, I guess, or one of the 3 key villages that Milton Keynes was built in the middle of. And we don't have many redways, so just going to school is either riding on quite a narrow pavement, or cycling on the road, which around school rush hour is, I'm seriously
it's a bit of a
worried.
vicious circle, isn't it? Because people will say, I don't want to walk or cycle because it's too dangerous because there's so many cars. I'm going to go in my car and make the problem worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, it's a question of everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's something that the local councils definitely can tackle by looking at planning permissions, by looking at town improvement kind of activities, especially when you're looking at regenerating things, like part of your town centre or something like that. And I think there's a lot of room for opportunity there to make it more accessible to people with children, for people with accessibility needs, and in general, just have a better quality of life, I guess, it all amounts to. Folks, it's been great talking to you. I'm trying to find a way to end the conversation because I feel like we could probably sit here with another cup of tea and talk more about what we think councils can and should do and what we could do. It's been absolutely fantastic having you on. There are some really amazing things happening in your neck of the woods, and I'm looking to join you for the festival if I can. And I'm looking forward to the conference on the 12th of September. And I put all of this information in a blog post. I put all of the links in there as well. And I just want to, end the show by not rambling on like I did last time.
And can I just say, I'm hoping possibly to see you in person. I think it's the 5th of April, isn't it? Your next cafe in Milton Keynes.
Good point.
Do you want to do your own plug?
Yes, my own plug. I completely forgot about it. We've got our own green cafe at the MK Gallery every first Friday of the month. Yeah, I'm hoping to see you there in person. That'd be awesome. And hopefully I can join you on your next online climate cafe as well.
Lovely.
I'm going to say thank you very much to both of you. On next week's show, I'm with Gavin Anderson, so let me know any questions you have in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining. Have a great night.
Thank you
very
much.
Bye-bye.